Good morning and welcome to week 8 of Homestead Homeful Garden Tour. Starting on the outside, my squashes are blooming. I haven't gotten any fruit just yet, but we still have time in the season and they sure do give off some really pretty blooms. Cucumber beetles are still a nuisance. I've been picking them off whenever I water and whenever I just kind of mess with the plants. The cucumber, I think, is probably having some issues because of that, but I do have some little cucumbers that are getting there. Potatoes are still trucking along. The provider bean, we've eaten 2 dinners from just this plant alone. Well, it's 5 plants in there, but we've had 5 different servings from it, and then a few just kind of stragglers here and there. The runner bean, chocolate runner, continues to climb up. It's got beautiful, beautiful flowers. No beans yet. Uncle Willie's is a storage bean, and they're getting there. So this patch is doing well. Waiting on those squashes. I still have the red Malabar spinach, and it didn't do a whole lot. It's finally starting to climb on that side. But that's kind of it. I don't know if my temperatures or I'm not sure. Maybe it's just I don't have enough sun in this tiny little corner. Maybe they're used to more. And the cucamelon that shared this is finally growing up. I'm really glad that I went ahead and utilized these buckets with the squashes. Even though they haven't put out any fruit yet, they look hopeful. So I would have felt like it was a bit more of a waste if I had left just the red Malabar spinach and the one cucamelon that did pop up in this one. I would have felt like it was a complete waste of a container. So I'm glad that I went ahead and put some squash seeds in there. Okay, starting on the outside, I had to change angles because of the sun, but starting on the outside, I took all of my cucumbers that were along the long edge of my garden, which was like right in here inside the fence. I brought them out because they were all trailing so much that it was taking up the entire pathway. So I had to bring them outside and come up with a little bit more fencing because the woodchucks do eat the leaves. Not a whole lot of production, but lots and lots of pretty flowers. So we'll see what happens with these guys. I got my basil out here too, and the one cherry tomato, this was on the porch. And another reason that I took and put all of this in a row is so that my 50 feet of gardening hose can now reach all of these containers too. My nasturtium, I know that the temperatures have gotten pretty hot for it, but it's still trucking along. I'll let it go and see what happens. And look what happened to pop up. Look what looks so much bigger. This is the okra, and it's got some leaves. It's got a lot of growing to do, so I don't know if it's going to produce anything, but we'll find out. Look at this tangled mess of a cucumber. It's got cucumbers on both sides of the little grid, so I'll let them get a little bit bigger. And then I think this plant's days are kind of numbered. It hasn't looked terribly healthy all season. It's kind of struggled. It's kind of just taken a beating from the cucumber beetles. It's putting off more cucumbers right now than it has all season, but I don't know. It seems like kind of a waste for the big pot, but we'll see. So on this side, I've got the lavender I think it just moved things over is what I did. I took out the nasturtium and moved things over so that everything would have a little bit more space, because the tomatoes were starting to look like a jungle and I pruned them quite heavily. But the cucamelons, they look pretty good. We've gotten a couple of ripe cucamelons, and I happened to pick a couple that weren't ripe. The weren't ripe ones, non-ripe ones, were not that great, so I didn't get such a great response out of my family. They kind of just said, oh, yeah, it tastes like cucumbers. So I was hoping for something a little more, so I think I'll wait until they're a little bit bigger. Like this one, it looks like it might be there. I don't know. It's hard for me to tell. Anyway, these are my California Wonders. Got some blooms. And then this little guy has an actual pepper. And I'm super excited about this because these are the peppers that I grew from seed, from very old seed. I've never in my life been able to grow peppers from seed before, so that was very exciting. I had taken some very old seed and soaked it in warm water for a couple of days, and they looked like they were softening up, and the tiniest little hair of a root started to form, and I thought, oh, okay. So I popped it in a little bit of soil and underneath my light, and there you go. So these are the 4 that survived out of, I think I did 20 seeds. So I don't have a wonderful germination rate just because they were old, but I knew that. Very happy to see them working so hard though. I moved around the watermelon a little bit because they were just getting a little bit more wet than I'd like for them to be. So I kind of supported them with a little bit of netting. There's one. And here's the second one. The second one's same size. It was sitting down on the base of the pot here, but I got a teeny tiny little itty bitty one back there. The nasturtium, this nasturtium is doing better than the other one in the other pot, which is interesting. Maybe I should move it over to this corner because apparently it's a little bit more shade. Maybe it's just because it's more soil. I don't know. Who knows? Look at how that one's branching out. Isn't that interesting? But I like all the vines. They're really pretty. Okay, the fruition mix tomatoes are still cranking. Nothing has come ripe yet. Here's one variety. I don't even know what they are. Here's a second one. It's supposed to be a cherry tomato, but look at the size of that. Wow. It's the biggest cherry tomato I've ever seen. It's huge. This is trying to get lighter and lighter. So let's see what happens with these. Okay, as far as the Gouda and the honey nut go, they've been climbing up the fence and along the fence. One has set off quite a few flowers, which is pretty sure this one's the honey nut and that one's the Gouda. But that's kind of all. I don't have any fruit off of it. It as well has been bugged by the cucumber beetles. I do get tiny little fruit, but nothing that's been pollinated. So I haven't come out here to do it myself. I just kind of wait and see what happens. Okay, the pumpkin is starting to turn orange. I gave it a new sling because I found out that the nylon, there was a nylon stocking that I did have it in, was just retaining too much water, and it was keeping the whole pumpkin wet. So I took that off and just put a new sling on it. It is definitely battling powdery mildew pretty good. Some of the leaves that I raised up are doing far better, much greener, much prettier. I think it just needs to definitely be off the ground, and the air is getting to it a lot better than when it was along the ground. I have beautiful flowering dill. There's a couple recipes that I have for pickling that just look really pretty with the flour in it, so I might just leave them and pick them for those and just start the brine. I don't know, honestly I'll probably just leave them, they're pretty. This Gouda hasn't done a whole lot. It's gotten a few blossoms. It still has some time, but it's not doing a whole lot. Okay, I've got cabbage, then the graffiti cauliflower, and then another cabbage. And man, they've gotten a few bugs, the caterpillars. A lot of it happened while I was away on a 3-night camping trip. So some of the damage happened then because I had a row cover on it to shade it. So I think the birds do an excellent job mostly of taking care of those little caterpillars when they see them, but the row cover was on, so they clearly couldn't get to any little caterpillars. So they had fun. Rainbow chard is definitely getting larger, but this is what it looks like when there's leaf miners. That's disgusting, isn't it? So these guys are coming right out. I mean, they're not edible. Isn't that terrible what they do to your beautiful rainbow chard? So clearly I missed some. Look at, that's the early ones. Isn't that crazy? I missed some of them. Some of them made it onto my chard. See? They're just terrible. They're ugly little bugs, aren't they? They make a lot of damage to such pretty leaves. I mean, look at the leaves. They're just beautiful. But boy, they make a lot of damage. Earlier this week, I harvested for the second time my salad bowl lettuce. I did notice that it does have like that underlying bitterness to it, just a little bit. It wasn't terrible. And since I had a salad and I had a couple other regular salad greens that I purchased from the store that I added with them, so it wasn't awful, but clearly it's the heat temperatures are just getting too much. It's been 90 several days last week, and it's going to be 90 again, I think, for 2 days this weekend. So yeah, it's taken a toll on the lettuce. I'm hoping that, I don't know, once it starts to have that bitterness, if it would go away if the temperatures drop a little or not. I'm not sure. So I'm trying to keep good notes of what lettuces kind of start to change first or the most, because I really do like having lettuce greens all summer long. We eat a ton of salad in the summer, so that's definitely something that I want on my list. And right next to it is the lettuce and kale that I had planted. I planted kale first and it didn't come up, so I didn't want to waste it, the bucket that is, so I planted lettuce, so it looks like they're both gonna come up. But again, the heat I think is really affecting it. It's just very, very slow. And I just noticed, do you know what that is? Leaf miner damage. So I'm just gonna pull the whole thing out. That's so annoying. The rest of them look okay. Kind of crazy that, so apparently they don't just bother the rainbow chard, they also bother lettuce, or kale. Okay, we've got more green beans. And I haven't harvested anything off of this bucket yet. There's, I think, 5 plants in here, but some of them are ready. I could probably take some of them today. Then I have the beautiful purple ones. Those are really pretty. I like how the leaves have the purple in them. The flowers are deep purple, and the beans. From what I understand, once you cook them, they lose the purple, but still looks pretty. Alright, so I have in this container, I have the broccoli, delicious tomato and the honey nut squash. The honey nut squash is doing great. It started to trail down and kind of take over some of the cucumbers, so I just took a unused tomato trellis, tomato cage, put it next to the pot because I'd really like to get the leaves off of the ground and the fruit as well. So while I was gone, I knew I had one fruit that I thought was pollinated and ended up not being so. And then look at that though. Completely surprised me while I was on vacation. And it's pretty good size. So hopefully I'll get 2 honey nuts. I think this one's growing a little wonky because of the hot weather that we had, or it was because of how smushed it was against the ground. So we'll see. And then look, I've got another female ready. Oh, I just bothered the bee that was coming to pollinate it. Sorry, little bee. Please come back. It really is pretty though, isn't it? Oh. That would be cucumber beetles in there. So frustrating. I don't have any males open right now. Oh, I do. On the other side, I'll show you what the male flower looks like. Okay, there's the male flower. It's on a very long stem, and right at the base of the stem, you don't see any kind of fruit right there at all. It's just stem all the way up to a flower. Okay, then I'll look at the female one more time. Okay, there's the female flower. It has, instead of a very long stem, it has a tiny little fruit and then the flower. So it doesn't have that really long stem that the male does. That's how you know the difference between the male and the female flowers. Before I went away, the broccoli was looking completely pristine, and then while I was away and had the row cover on, that happened. So the birds have done a wonderful job keeping caterpillars away that they can see, but when I have a shade cloth over top, clearly they can't see, and that's what happens. I have some tomatoes. This is a delicious tomato. I had a couple blossoms that completely dried up from the heat, but then that one looks like it's starting to turn color. It's exciting. I'm still getting some peas. I harvested, I think, with 3/4 of a cup, and then a couple more small pods, but I should get a little bit more before they kind of peter out. A couple of them at the bottom are looking very dry and a little sad. Lucas's beans are doing great. They have put off a few more flowers now. They're getting extremely bushy and taking over. This is only 4 plants in 1 square, and we've had 2 side dish dinners off of it, and as well as a couple here and there that the kids have just eaten. My other pea, again, is doing pretty good. I'm still getting a few pods here and there that I'll let ripen. This guy is huge. So some of them are still trailing, while others have died, and I've just removed the entire plant. So the cherry tomato that is sharing the spot here is finally getting a chance to do something. So that's been kind of a fun experiment. It's not going to be very productive because clearly it's very smushed in there. But I thought it was interesting to see what happens. And as the peas are dying out, it's starting to get a little bit more room and starting to branch out. So that's cool. The lettuces are growing very, very slowly, except for the, and I don't know if I'm saying it properly, but the Grass Blonde, I believe. It looks to be a little bit faster than the rest of them. The red salad bowl looks pretty good too. And then I planted some radishes there that I think it's just been too hot to actually do a whole lot. I've got a couple of them that popped up. we'll see. This pea is still producing, not as much as the other ones, but it is. So I should be able to get a nice dinner serving off of some more of these peas. Do you see what I see? Another one I'm going to reach for. Looks tiny, but it fell off, so yay! So I had a couple, and one of them ended up not being ripe, and the other one had a whole bunch of bug damage. So hopefully these will taste better, because the first one I had was so very delicious. Oh, look what I see here. That's my nasturtium leaf, and look what got it. Leaf miner. That might be a good thing to plant next to rainbow chard then, as a trap crop, because if they're attracted to nasturtium, and we'll mine those leaves, that might work. On the bottom of one of the nasturtium leaves, that looks like a leaf miner egg, the white, but the black I'm pretty sure is aphids. So we're just gonna smoosh them. Yep, looks like aphids. Yuck. Bye bye aphids. Yeah, look at those leaves. That is very interesting. I do wonder then if nasturtium would be a good plant to plant next to rainbow chard to kind of divert them and trap them. That's interesting. See, the things you find out just by planting something and observing it. My eggplant is growing. It's a little spiky. Hey, I was wondering if it was getting too smushed by the ground cherry, because the ground cherry is taking up so much room, but look. Aww. Thank you, little green bee. There's another eggplant getting pollinated. And see that little black? There's two of them right there. Those little black things there, those are the flea beetles. That is what is causing all these little tiny punctures in the leaves on the eggplant and mostly the ground cherry. The ground cherry is completely covered with them. I haven't dusted with them because there's so many other insects all over the leaves and things that I didn't want to harm them to. Oh, there's another little one of those green little bees underneath. I think they're bees. I'm not sure if they're bees or flies. They appear to be bees. I'm pretty sure they're bees. I don't want to disrupt them, but how cool is that?